Whoop, woo. Woo! It is hot in the studio today. Oh, and I'm hearing myself. It is so hot in the studio today. Out of nowhere, it's like 90 degrees in Los Angeles. So I guess summer is basically here. We got the fan going. We need, like, honestly, more fans in here. I don't know where everyone is. Is it hot near you? Is it still cold? This came out of the blue. It's been raining a lot here, and then just out of nowhere, it's 90 degrees. And it looks like it's going to be 90 degrees all week. So I had my husband like spray the deck so that Nova and Truth can go outside and enjoy the sun and be in the water. It's about 60. 60 is not bad. This I would trade, to be honest with you, because it is freaking hot. It is so hot. And, you know, we're in the studio with the lights, and so it's even hotter in here. Oh, you know what I think I want to do today? You know what? Oh, and I want to say, whoever is here, and I know maybe she's here in the chat who won the last raffle, which was the Survivorhood is Powerful. We're sending that out, by the way, on Friday. So you're going to be receiving it. And I'm just looking at something here in the corner. Wait, hold on. Let's do a raffle. I feel like anyone even wants this. Does anyone... Does anyone want this? If you do, it's okay. What I can do is, Miko's probably in the chat. Miko, if you're in the chat, whoever is we'll just have like dinner party, new dinner party members. He'll throw it into like the, I don't know, raffle spinner virtual thing, and we'll send this out to you. I just feel like doing that because it's here in the studio ever since the protest, and I'm like, what do I do with this? Wait, do I have it? Yeah, it's down here. The first one's down here, and then obviously it became us because so many people came forward, and so yeah. So whoever becomes a dinner party member today, I'll have Miko put it through the virtual raffle thing, and then someone can get this sent out on Friday. Parker, stay hydrated in the heat. Thankfully, still having some decent spring weather in Ohio. Power to survivors. God, yeah, I would love some more spring weather. I feel like Los Angeles just kind of jumps through seasons, and all within one day, by the way. All within one day, it will be winter in the morning, spring in like early afternoon, and then straight up summer by like 2 p.m. Okay, so how is everyone doing? My brain's gonna be melting a little bit today just because I'm a little bit overheated, and I got into the studio a little bit late today, but it's so nice to see everyone here, all the members. What are we getting into today? What are we digesting today? We're going to be watching, because so many people requested, Chris Massey's interview with Raven Symone. And, you know, it's really... My memories with Chris Massey and his mom were honestly good. Like, on set, Chris was always just nice and funny, and he didn't really participate whatsoever in what was happening on set. That wasn't so good. Like, obviously, the bullying. He was just nice and always funny and a good time, honestly. Welcome to the Munchies, Astoria. So fast forward, when the reunion happened, for example, no one reached out to me. I had to find out, like everyone else did, by just seeing it online and seeing people tag me in it, basically saying, where is at Match the Source? Oh, someone gifted a membership. That's so sweet. I Miss Bean. Is that what it? I Miss Bean. Thank you so much. So what was I saying? Yeah, so I found out like everyone else, because everyone was tagging me going, where is Match the Source? Where is Match the Source? And I'm like, what is going on? And at first I didn't see Dan Schneider. Everyone's heard the story a million times. At first I didn't see, I'm gonna say it just one more time. At first I didn't see Dan Schneider. And it felt very sad because I'm like, oh wow, we're almost in our 30s and we're still doing this whole let's not include everybody thing. And so it was sad at first. And then I realized Dan was there, and that, you know, right away I was like, well, I'm glad that I'm actually wasn't invited, because if I showed up there and I saw him, I would probably run away. So, you know, it was I had mixed feelings when it came to the reunion, and I ended up getting into my car. I was at this store called Stories in Echo Park, where it's a coffee shop and a bookshop. It's awesome. If anyone's ever been there, not sure if you live near the east side, but it is a great, great shop. And I was there when I found out. I was getting a coffee, gonna read a book, and then I was getting tagged in all of this, and I got into my car and I just cried. And I ended up going live, like making a story, I think, about that, not thinking anyone was really gonna listen to that, because at that time I think I had, I don't know, 40,000 followers, way less than I do now. And so I just kind of was just being honest to the followers and my friends, that I was feeling really sad about all of that. And then fast forward, it got around. A lot of people realized that I was obviously very upset about everything. And then it turned into a live of me going, well, I'm going to start telling my story and what happened to me, yada, 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 yada. But even though Chris Massey, for example, was always nice to me, and even Rio Amir, Sean Flynn, was nice to me, no one called me to even let me know, hey, there's going to be a reunion and you're not invited. So if you see this, I just want you to know that this is, you know, happening, to prepare yourself. No one called me whatsoever. No one texted me. And obviously, once the video kind of went around of me being upset about it, the first person who called me was Rio Amir. He's Rio Amir today, because Quiet and I were talking about how he was in the chat. And everyone's like, Sean Flynn's in here? And then I didn't even realize it was him, because his username or whatever is Rio Amir. And you wouldn't know Rio Amir unless you knew Rio Amir, because he's Sean Flynn as well. So anyways, Sean was the person who called me and was like, Alexa, I'm so sorry, and this, you know, this happened, and it was last minute, and then he I mean, this is, I have to say this, I'm sorry, Quiet, but I do have to say this. He goes, we didn't have your number. I'm like, Rio, you're on the phone with me right now. You have my number. You've had my same number forever. And he was like, oh shit, yeah. Well, other people didn't have your number. And you're like, you guys all had my number. And also there's Instagram, where you can just DM someone and go, hey, this is what's going on. It wasn't like you couldn't reach me whatsoever. So anyways, at least Sean did call me. And then eventually that turned into Jamie Lynn Spears reaching out, and the Jamie Lynn Spears Follow Me remix music video and whatever. But my point of saying this all is I didn't really talk to Chris Massey much after Zoe 101. And my memories of him were actually honestly chill for the most part. So when I saw him outside somewhere talking to TMZ about wanting to mediate for the cast members and saying he didn't remember any bullying, it was a little bit of a bummer, just because I know he was aware of it, and his mom would literally give me Bible verses and shit to help me get through the bullying times. So I haven't spoken to Chris Massey, obviously, in a little bit. And we all know that he has been a pretty big supporter of Jamie Lynn Spears and her book and that whole thing. and him and I got into a little bit of a disagreement over DMs when basically I called him out for saying that he didn't see any bullying when I'm very much aware that he did. And then via DM, I was like, you don't remember the Britney Spears? Like, Britney Spears has already apologized to me and validated that that experience happened. You all knew that happened on set. He's like, oh, okay, well, yeah, no, we knew about that. And it's like, well, so anyways, now we're here. I haven't spoken to Chris Massey in a while. His mom seems to forgot that I even existed and doesn't even know my name and thinks that everyone was doing the documentary for money, even though no money was given when doing the documentary. And also, Chris Massey is sitting down with Raven Symone to talk about a doc he hasn't even seen, which is this not bizarre? How can you sit down and talk about a documentary, your opinion of it, when you haven't even seen it? That's weird. Is that not weird? It's a little bit strange. Why sit down? Why don't you just sit down when you watch it? And there's this whole thing happening with some people at Nickelodeon, Nick Stars, that haven't watched the doc because they feel that they were there, and so therefore they know everything. And it's like, well, you were only there for the specific time that you were there, which means another time that you weren't there, something could have happened, and wouldn't you want to know what that was and to support that person for coming forward or be aware of that happening? And then also, just because you were there doesn't mean that someone else didn't have a different experience. People could have different experiences in the same setting. I mean, let's think about the Amanda Bynes show and Brian Peck. I'm sure Amanda Bynes had a very different experience with Brian Peck than Drake Bell did. So two things can exist. And I'm just not understanding people thinking that they know everything because they were there. It's just not possible. It's just not possible. Everyone can have a different experience while they're in the same setting. And I'm hoping that this documentary, at the very least, did shed some light on that fact, that people can have different experiences in the same setting. Right? Welcome to the Munchies. Allison, welcome to the Munchies. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Look up Kyle Massey. Yeah, and that happened too, and I was talking about that the other day, and now he says that he actually is a survivor himself of the girl's mom. So that was a wild reveal. I'm not sure if you saw that episode, but it was wild to read that. Okay, so we're gonna watch how long is this? 24-minute interview with Raven Symone, and I'm pretty sure is this Raven Symone's wife as well, right? What is her name? Miranda? What's her last name? So I guess they have a podcast and it's called Tea Time. And so, okay, let's get into it. If there's anything I should know going into this, please say it into the chat. I'll be on the lookout. Let's digest. Here we go. And also, let me know one in the chat if you can hear everything okay.
Janet Jackson, if you ever see this, Raven had a whole poster of you in her
Janet knows. Janet knows. Janet knows.
Those mugs are amazing.
Today, right?
Today is
whoa, that
a
mug
bit different. We're actually not going to go into the pot. You reached out.
Is that a gold toilet? Is that a gold plated toilet mug? That is unreal. Okay.
Us. You said, hey guys, I have some tea to spill. Cool. We like spilling tea. Come spill the tea on Tea Time. So we're actually going to be talking about a documentary that recently came out called Quiet on Set. who better to have than you two to talk about the dark side of TV?
Which is also the reason why I thought it would be better for me to have this conversation, especially with Raven. You know, she's experienced being a child star. I know what it's like being on a, Nickelodeon sitcom in this particular case. I haven't watched the documentary. I will let that be known.
We watched it. We did. And for anyone...
Then why are you sitting down to have a conversation about this when you haven't watched it? And why? My question is, why do you not want to watch it? And I'm not saying he has to watch it. But at the same time, if you're going to be discussing it, wouldn't you want to at least know all of the information? This is so weird. Okay.
There who hasn't seen it, Quiet on Set is about Nickelodeon shows under the reign of, let's say, Dan Schneider.
Yes.
And there was a lot of
Toxicity.
Wait, I love Raven's facial expression when saying Dan Schneider. Wait.
Behind the scenes.
Yeah. Set is about Nickelodeon shows under the reign of, let's say, Dan Schneider.
Yes.
And there was a lot of
That's so
toxicity
good.
behind the scenes and some
Yes.
hiring of pedophiles.
Yeah, most specifically within this documentary, Drake Bell comes forward talking about the sexual abuse and molestation that he
Received from the dialogue coach.
Yeah.
It's very unfortunate what happened to, even like Drake Bell, because that's someone that I know personally, not just on a meet and first name basis, but like we've traveled the world. We've done humanitarian work together. We've fed children in Nicaragua and Peru together. Like we've done a lot of things. So even for me to hear that was shocking. They'll blame people or try to victimize people for coming out late. But a lot of times you don't know what those people are dealing with or how it weighs on them.
Okay, let's start from
Right. I'm glad that he understands that, because that's very true. Survivors do get a lot of criticism. I mean, all the time, honestly, but specifically when it comes to how many years after the traumatic event happened that they choose to come forward about it. And he's right. This is because this takes a lot of internal work, sometimes therapy, sometimes flashbacks happen. It's so different for each survivor. And I do want to remind everyone here that the average time span for a survivor to come forward is 50 years. 50 years average. And so it just seems like the criminal system, the legal system, civil, no one has really caught up to the statistics, the actual facts when it comes around survivorhood and how long each survivor can take, and that each journey for each survivor needs to be honored and respected and supported, because there are statistics for this now, right? So I'm glad he said that.
You were hired as what character on Zoe 101?
I played Michael Barrett on Zoe 101. We had a lot of fun. We were kids. When I auditioned, I think I was 13. I think when I got the role, and I think I was 14 on the first season. And what's really funny is I actually found out that I booked the role on the set of That's So Raven.
Yeah, because his brother plays my brother.
Yeah, I was going to say Kyle
Yeah.
Massey.
Wait. Chris Massey's only 1 year older than me? That's impossible. Quiet, can you search Chris Massey and just see his age? Because him saying he was 13 in the first season, that was basically my age. And I don't necessarily...
He's 34.
He's 34. Okay, so he is older than me. What, like just 2 years? Wow, for some reason I thought he was like 3. I always thought he was like 4. Oh, that makes sense. I think he was 14 in season 1, turning 15. Okay.
Was on That's So Raven.
Yeah, so I was walking through the halls of That's So Raven, and my mom was like, "You got Zoe 101, you got it." I'm like, "All right, cool."
So when you're on Zoe 101, were parents around and were they
Okay,
allowed
cool.
to be on set? Because that was one of the things that the documentary touches on, that parents weren't allowed around.
For us, my mom, my dad, they were on set.
Yep.
No matter what. It's a really touchy subject that people should understand that aren't familiar with being on a set. Your mom and dad have full authority to be on set.
I know your parents and you know mine.
Yeah.
And there are some parents that are so mesmerized by the glitz and glamour.
Yep.
This person's going to take care of my kid and this
Yep.
is it. And then there are other families and cultures
Yep.
that say, if you touch my kid, I'm killing you.
Yep.
So I'm going to be underneath them all day long.
And
Yeah.
that's what I was going to say, that there are people who I think when their kids book roles, they all of a sudden kind of jump into a different tax bracket, and then you're around professionals, right? Like, not all parents.
Interesting that they're going right into the parents, with Chris specifically saying that all parents like have the right to be on set. Yeah, I mean, technically they do, I guess. But my memory and so many others was that the parents were not allowed on set. And especially when it came to the dorm rooms at Pepperdine University, they were so small that that was their excuse. Where, okay, we have lights in here, we have crew in here, we got wardrobe in the corner over there, we got makeup over here sometimes. We don't have room to also cram each kid's parent. And so they would say that a lot, like, oh, the dorm's too small. When we were outside, they would even be, the parents were allowed to be around, but they were still like a little bit away from the actual location where we were. And from my memory, they didn't have monitors. Like, my mom wasn't set up with, or I didn't know any of the parents set up with a monitor to really watch their kid on set. So him saying that, it's like, yeah, Chris, but also you don't remember how our parents weren't on set with us in any of the dorm room scenes? JC, parents shouldn't have to be on set to prevent ABUSC. And that's so true too. What JC is saying here is so true. It's like saying, this is how I think of it. That's like saying when you drop off your kid at school and your kid gets ABUSED by the teacher or the janitor or someone there, that it's the parent's fault for dropping off the kid at school. Now, the parents are at least in the, like, they're a lot closer, obviously, than being when you drop off a kid at school. But to blame a parent for something happening, it's just kind of sad, because really we should always stay focused on who actually committed the ABUSC or who enabled the ABUSC. There are extreme power dynamics on set, even for the parents. The parents are also dealing with power dynamics.
Understand the industry, so they come into it just as green as their young child who just booked this role.
Most of the kids that were on shows that I was on Nickelodeon or Disney, they know my parents. I know their parents. I know Raven's mom, dad, just like she knows my mom and dad. Jamie Lynn's mom or dad was on set every day. I know what Victoria's mom and dad look like. I know what Sean Flynn's mom and dad look like. If you go back and watch, like, I do this all the time when I watch That's So Raven with my kids, you'll hear my mom laughing. You'll hear my dad laughing. You'll hear her mom laughing.
Yeah.
Like, I know their laughs. And I'm like, oh, that's my mom. Oh, that's Miss Lydia. That's how close they were on set. And I'll explain this for the people at home that don't know how this works, right? So I'm gonna give you a very simple day-to-day of as a kid being on set, right? You get there, it might be 7 in the morning, right? That's your call time. Your mom and dad, you come in with your mom and dad, they say, hey, look, what do you want for breakfast? You gotta go to the schoolroom, doing your studies. Say you do school for 2-3 hours, and they say, hey, look, we need you in hair and makeup. The rule on our set, which was kind of the same way with
It's an unspoken rule. It's not a real rule. It's unspoken.
yeah, but what they would do is the person who would say, hey, you got to go to hair and makeup. The same person, his name was Tim, he would come in, he would say, we need you at hair and makeup, and then you got to go to set. Right after he would get me from...
Wait, who's Tim? Why am I missing out on Tim? Anyone know who Tim is? I'm blanking on who Tim is. I remember Ian. Who's Tim? I remember Steve. And then we sadly found out that Steve was one of the ADs that got a report about Brian Peck. Such a bummer because Steve was honestly a very nice person from what I remember. But who the fuck is Tim? Who's Tim? Who is Tim? Okay.
The school trailer, he would go to my trailer, tell my dad, hey, Chris is going to set. Obviously, some parents are more hands-on than
Yes.
others, right?
Because we definitely have worked with people whose parents did not
We're
bring
not.
them to set. We've worked
Exactly.
with those people.
Yeah. Where's he going? Where's he about to be? I'm with him.
You know, one thing that really irks me is that child actors and children in entertainment aren't protected under federal laws.
Yep.
And
Crazy.
True.
which is absolutely crazy.
Insane.
You know, it says there's no federal law protecting child actors. Yes, in 1938, Congress passed the FLSA labor law, a labor law that established a minimum wage for children, including age standards, hours, and wages. However, this was only for industries in agriculture and manufacturing. But the one industry that is exempt from adhering to the
Wow.
FLSA was entertainment.
Wow.
As a result, each state is left to decide which labor laws they wish to enact, if any. I do believe...
Yeah, which I just recently heard that 17 states still do not protect children that are within the entertainment industry. And you have to remember that that means studios, for example, are going to end up choosing specific states that maybe are a little more lenient and finding all the loopholes when it comes to child labor laws. They'll go to places for tax exemptions, breaks, whatever, and also when it comes to child labor laws. And that's just so scary to think that the children are still not being protected when it comes to working. Children working. So I'm really glad that Raven Symone mentioned that in this interview, to be honest with you, because that's very important to know. And that's why there's a lot of work to do, honestly, in getting some legislation to really pull on through.
What we went through, there does need to be a standard
Yeah.
across the board
Absolutely.
of what we can and cannot do and what needs to happen for us. And at the same time, I will say thank you to all the teachers that keep up great laws for us.
Absolutely, they do.
And keep it. And there's many teachers inside of the teacher union that are working to create a standard of work environment for the child.
And then there are 17 states which have 0 laws. So, for example, if a production knew that, they could potentially fly their production out to let's
that
say,
location.
Mississippi, Montana,
Right.
Nevada, New Hampshire, where there is no regulation for children. And then,
Horrible.
And a
but
lot of,
wow,
and I
wow.
will say to, you know, to the industry, they don't really fly us to those random states that have no,
Yeah, not too much.
not too much.
Yeah.
And at the same
Wait, I
time,
love that Chris Massey said not too much. It's like, what is not too much? Now I'm trying to think of any states that I worked in while I was a child star. What about Iowa? I wonder what the deal was with Iowa. I'm trying to think of places that I've been as a minor. Iowa. And I'm trying to think, like, how... I got to really look back at some of the jobs that I did when I was a minor and think about the states. I'm thinking Iowa. I also filmed, like, Disney cruise ship commercial. And then they brought us, right, Mom, to... It was just the Bahamas. So I don't know. I don't know if they are strategic about sometimes bringing children into states, countries where they're able to get around child labor laws. Pretty scary.
just in case.
Yeah.
Just in case
Absolutely.
you find that one production that wants to skirt, put us under federal law
Yeah.
and make it safe for everyone.
Totally.
Yeah. I mean, because like I had a really amazing teacher on my set, Miss Patty Foy, who I love you to death. She was
Shout out to the teachers.
the
Let parents
teachers,
know.
man. And it's funny because I'm so glad we mentioned that because not only was my mom and dad on set, but my teacher, Miss Patty Foy, she would be on it. The teacher on the set
No,
has like
I'm all the way up too.
the highest authority. Like
Yeah.
people don't know that when you're on a kid set, your teacher can come and pull you off that set and say, "Hey, look, he's got to do math homework."
And she can shut the whole production down if
Yeah.
she doesn't like something. Or he can shut the
Yeah,
whole production down if they
absolutely.
don't like something.
Well, where was Patty Foy? Wait, was Patty Foy the freaking studio teacher when we were working on Zoe 101, because I've been trying to figure out what her name. For some reason, I thought it was Millie, but maybe it was Patty. Either way, that set teacher on Zoe 101 didn't shut down production when I was left traumatized after the experience that I had in Jamie Lynn Spears' trailer. My mom was screaming for the studio teacher. And you know where she was? She was with Jamie. She was with Jamie the whole time and never checked in on me. Not once. Did not check in on me. Not once. And she didn't shut down any set. And let's be honest. I don't know where this conversation's going to go, and I wonder if it's going to go in this direction. But if I was sitting there, I would love to ask Raven and Chris, when do you remember a teacher ever shutting down set? Because the power dynamic, I don't think any teacher ever even felt comfortable doing something like that because they didn't want to be seen as problematic and wanted to work again. Because you have to remember these teachers also get rehired by these studios, and so they'll kind of float around from show to show. Yes, they do technically have the power to stop production, and so does SAG Union. But how often are they actually doing that is the real question. And my memories when it came to the studio teacher on Zoe 101 specifically, again, here's when two people can have different experiences. Chris had that experience with the set teacher, and I had this experience. Both can be valid. I'm not saying Chris Massey's experience is not valid, but it is important to know that, sure, that happened, and I had this experience. So Yoshi Pie, even they can shut production down. How many of them actually do? If they make too much of a problem, I'm sure they will get replaced. Exactly, Yoshi Pie. Exactly. All right.
Absolutely.
Teachers have a lot of power, and and some of them use it.
Minimal recognition.
And some
do.
of them
Yeah,
Some
don't.
just
Yeah, there
play
we
their
go. Okay,
role,
I'm glad they went
that.
there.
But Miss Foy, she would come there and she would talk to them, and she'd say, "Hey, listen, he's got stuff he's got to do right now. He has to go." They would hate it, but at the end of the day, school comes first.
I think that it's worth noting that a set is a very weird little bubble because especially if you do more than one season, you're in this kind of intense pressure cooker of an environment with people where you get to know each other. It feels kind of familial. And I think that it could be easy potentially for a parent to maybe...
Is Miranda in the industry? Because I'm not sure what Miranda has done, but I'm just curious. This is to the chat. Was Miranda in the industry? Was she also a child star? And also, am I getting pronouns right? Kind of looks familiar, Miranda, but I'm trying to figure out from where.
Step back, especially when I think kids start getting to the 15, 16 area.
So that's another thing, right? Let's also talk about how you have young people accumulating thousands of dollars a week. Sometimes kids are making more money than their parents.
Yeah.
So then we have to kind of dive into the psyche
most
of
the time. I'm sorry, most of
the
the
time.
time.
But then you
most
have
of the
like people like
David Henry.
David Henry. You'd be like, "Hey, you grab it up." Anyway, love you, David.
Love you, David.
Knowing that your child is making more money than you, and that you have to make things work because it then becomes your livelihood, can only be, for lack of a better word, a mind.
And again, if you don't have the education, if you are a green parent to this and you're kind of like, okay, I just want to facilitate, and then you have other adults saying like, oh, don't worry about it, or
it's weird. I do want to kind of bring it to that weird section because looking at the documentary, one thing that I saw, and please comment in the comments.
Yeah, comment in the comments. Where else would you comment
in the comments? Honestly, that's how I say it too. Comment in the comments. Sometimes I'm saying comments when I'm talking about the live chat. Comment in the comments. Okay, she's not in the industry. So then why is she... Okay, maybe it's just her objective point of view of this.
What's your comment?
Or you know what? Don't comment in the comments. Comment somewhere else.
Comment somewhere else. But please tell me if I'm wrong in the comments. But it really did feel like Dan Schneider was kind of dismissive of his male black characters.
Me and Kyle always joke about this. I'm like, you were on the one all-black show with the one white cast member, and I was on the all-white cast member, and I was the only black one.
Hilarious.
Brothers were happy at the scene.
It's like you guys had Chelsea and they had me. You know? I thoroughly enjoyed being on set. I never felt excluded. He did a really good job of making it like Friends for teenagers. That's kind of what our show was, right? It was
Yeah.
like, we're always sitting around a big table, we're all eating together, we're all like hanging out together. When I see that people say like, even the thing like toxic work environment, you know, I'm not here to defend anyone. You know, I'm just here to say what my truth is.
Yeah,
right?
did you witness toxic?
I believe that we grew up in a way, right, where certain people can get upset or angry or lash out sometimes, right?
Yeah.
But for me,
It's not toxic.
it's not toxic. It's like,
Is he ever going to address the Ariana Grande content? The slap content? Is he going to acknowledge Jeanette McCurdy's book and those allegations? What I find really interesting about the people who haven't watched the doc, it really shows. I can really hear that they haven't watched the doc because they keep thinking that Dan Schneider, which I don't really necessarily believe because they must have seen articles about leading up to Quiet on Set. It was pretty much everywhere. So I doubt that they haven't heard some details when it comes to the documentary. But they're acting like Dan Schneider, Nickelodeon, was just being accused of having some fits, some tantrums, and being a little snarky sometimes to, you know, his employees. This is a way bigger problem. Massive. And I love that he's just laughing about it. Like, you know, this is my experience. Because he didn't even watch the doc. And you're like, dude, if you watch the doc, and again, I'm not saying he needs to watch the doc. I'm just saying if he did, and then he's going to talk on it, I think he would be talking about it differently. I don't think he would. I would hope so. I would hope that he wasn't just talking about being snarky or just not being the best boss, per se. Dan Schneider, his content was beyond inappropriate. And Chris Massey and Sean, like, they were both in that scene of the goop hop in the background. You're like, "Wah."
That's normal.
yeah, it's, you know what I mean? Like,
For those who know what we talk about.
I'll give you like this. My dad was a Marine, and you know he was very strict, very stern, but he was loving, fun.
Love me some Mike Massey.
Yeah, everyone loves my dad. Fun person to be around, but he was very stern and strict with us. So for me, when someone would say, "Hey, you gotta get your shit together. Let's go. We gotta go." For me, it was okay. Let me learn my lines. Let me focus. Let's get this moving because we got, you know, we're on a schedule. And you have to understand too, when you're dealing with kids, okay, you're dealing with kids who are all the same age. We're all like have girlfriends, or we're all like puberty. We're flirting with each other. We're telling jokes, and we're doing all these things. It's sometimes you can lose track.
Wait, what? Wait, what set is this? That was, I'm sorry. Wait, that was hilarious. We're all flirting with each other. You're like, oh, really? Who's flirting with who? Who's flirting with who? But yeah, I guess I didn't really have a boy, like, I think I had like my first kiss when, it was season 2. So that means, yeah, sure. But I don't even remember ever talking about that with anyone. But it's so interesting that he said that. It's like we're flirting with one another, puberty.
This is work,
Yeah.
right? You can
Yeah,
be on
that's
set
what
and you're laughing and joking while they're like trying to block and they're trying to light, and they're like, "Hey, look, we're losing sunlight." Because you got to think, my show filmed outside as well. So it's like, when you're losing sunlight, they're like, "We can't film this tomorrow." You know what I'm saying? So for me, yeah, I've witnessed him be upset when things were going wrong, but so does every boss, so does every manager. You know what I mean? Like, if you're gonna say that someone yelling is a toxic environment, you have to look at all sports.
What did he just say? What? Wait, I remember Alexa and I visited Corey, yeah, on Disney, and his mother was in trailer with us when Corey was on set. Yeah, not the trailer. Wasn't it a green room? Because when it was live action, live audience, live action. When it's live audience, they have rooms, not trailers. And yes, Mom, you're correct. She was hanging out with us in the room while Kyle was on set. And that's because that means that the set teacher is around. And so the set teacher will take over being a guardian, yada, yada, yada. But him acting like Dan Schneider was just a douche sometimes and just just agitated is a little bit. He so has not seen the documentary. He needs to see the documentary before he talks about this topic. I just think I'm giving him a little bit more of just the benefit of the doubt because I think if he would have watched it, maybe this would be a different conversation. But and what's with not watching the doc? I wonder if they're not watching the doc because they're like, I will not see that Dan is a not good guy. You're like, okay, I understand that could be also like not wanting to know. There's a lot to process, and I understand that. But it's interesting that he's not saying why he hasn't watched the documentary. I'm not sure if he says it later on in this conversation, but why does he ever say why he's not watching it? Why he hasn't watched it?
All coaches.
That's very toxic.
Right,
I want to hold. I want you to go to the bathroom and clean your nose.
Jesus, really?
Go to the bathroom and clean your nose.
Shit. Only Raven could ever even. Where is it?
Right there.
Thanks, Ray.
You're welcome, brother.
Did he have something in his nose? Wait, did she legit just say, go take that out of your nose? And
they could have just edited that out.
They could have totally edited that out. And she was like, no, I'm keeping that in. I'm kind of glad she did.
I understand what you're saying, and I agree. I grew up in a household where aggressive words were not to bring you down, but to build you up. What I think the documentary is showing the toxicity is the fact that he was asking for massages from people.
Yes.
He was not creating, a safe environment for an actor under the age of 18 to voice their concerns. He was bulldozing ideas.
Look at Chris Massey's face.
Women in the writers' room.
Yeah, I was going to say, he was really terrible to his 2 female staff writers. It was an abuse of power. And I think that even there was a director, an All That director, who was talking about how there was a palpable difference when Dan would kind of come onto set and an energy shift. And granted, you know what I mean? Like, some people are going to be more sensitive to that. Some people are going to have more awareness. I'm not saying that, like, you didn't have the experiences you had at all. But I think that the people who were coming forward clearly had really negative encounters and felt very unsafe.
Yes.
And across the board, regardless of how you were raised, when we're at work, the hope is everyone feels safe. They were talking about
correct. You can't just say, well, I did and someone else didn't, so I don't care because I was fine. That's selfishness. You can't just say, and look at how he's even kind of responding, like in his facial expressions to hearing this. I feel what I'm feeling, and I'm not saying this is a fact. I'm saying what I'm feeling is Chris Massey feels like what he's feeling like to me is that he had his own personal experience, and that feels more truthful for him than other people's experience. And instead of at least listening to other people talk about their experiences and wanting to know, he's doing the opposite. And I think that has to do with him legitimately feeling that his experience is maybe slightly more valid than everyone else's. It's just so, it's a bummer. I love the Nicole emotes in the chat. Okay.
that segment that was kind of like a truth or dare, where these kids were being required to do really uncomfortable things that they didn't like, as far as like one of the boys had to get into a nude colored suit and be covered in peanut butter and licked by dogs. These oddly kind of sexual, yet we're making it fun and playful because it's kids. And they were just, it was always kind of
Teetering.
on the borderline. And I think that when we look at it today versus what it was then, people were a lot more tolerant then than they are now.
And that's just the way society goes with television. If you go back to the beginning of television, you could not do the things that you can't do them now. There was a character on her show, she was looking back at her.
But wouldn't you think, that's also something, and valid. What they're saying is absolutely true when it comes to the industry slowly learning what people are allowing them to get away with and what they're not. But wouldn't you think that children being any footage that is suggestive in that type of way, don't you think that that should never have been tolerable? That Dan, for example, would know that's so absolutely fucking terrible. And who am I? Who am I? Why am I doing this? What this is horrible. This kid is supposed to trust me. I'm an adult on set. And I'm having this kid with this potato and this thing in the bedroom and on the bed. At any time, that was not acceptable behavior. Even though, sure, we can look at how the industry in general has had to evolve, progress through the audience's response to its content or its entertainment. But I don't think that negates the fact that it was always wrong. It was always wrong, and someone should have stepped in when it was so obviously wrong. And Dan loves to remind us that Nickelodeon was just watching it and green-lighting it and...
Here on that show, and she said that over-sexualizing a young girl at that age made her very uncomfortable in her life.
Also, it's worth being said too that like a young girl's experience is
different than a young
very
boy's
different than a young
100%. For the fans, it hurts me for them because like I get so many people who come at me like, or I'll see the comments and they're like, "This ruined my childhood. My childhood's ruined because of
welcome. When I was gay, when I came.
Wait, why is he smiling at that too? I don't even feel any remorse because he hasn't watched the doc. Sorry, I keep forgetting he hasn't watched the goddamn doc. I'm like, why don't I feel any remorse from him? And instead he's like, I feel bad for the fans. And I feel bad for fans too, in the sense where this was traumatic for everyone involved. Sure. But he didn't seem to say he felt bad for the female writers that came forward or the cast from All That have come forward about the toxic work environment. He felt what it feels like to me is that he feels sorrier, like more sorry for the fans. And this is again what I was talking about when we were all listening to the Boy Meets World podcast, where it's the clawing back in vibe of Hollywood, where these people, I'm stating my opinion. For the most part, people are still tied to the industry in one way or another. I've had to really seriously remove myself from the industry so that I can do this, which means that was a lot, honestly, have to face. And I chose this, and I am proud of this, and I'm you get what I'm saying. The industry doesn't want me back in it at all. I get no calls from the industry, and to be honest, even when it came to some things about the doc too, I could tell when the industry stepped in, they're like, Alexa, no. Like, I don't think the industry likes me that much because this is what I say a lot too, is people that give signs of being a whistleblower. So that is, this person's never in any way going to be a bystander that just And now I've also built a platform where I can vocalize these things. And so I can get people to discuss and have these conversations, which is why I say power to survivors, because I want more and more survivors to feel empowered like that, where they feel that they can create even their own safe spaces. Oh, you're fine. Create safe spaces for themselves and others to talk about these things. And so, so when I hear Chris Massey saying that, it makes me feel like he's still protecting the industry in a sense, where he doesn't want the fandom to necessarily fade, because the fandom is what helps a lot of people's careers. And so you don't want the fans to now be traumatized by you. And I think that's what I feel like the cast members in general have to differentiate, is that Dan Schneider isn't us, obviously. And just because the fans find this to be traumatic, they're talking about Dan Schneider, they're talking about the things that were happening behind the scenes. And yeah, sure, maybe that means they're not able to watch Zoe 101 anymore. And okay, is that really the worst thing in the world? I don't know. I don't know. And I'm sure when you've had your own personal experience like Chris Massey, where he feels he had a good experience and did, that must, I understand that he's feeling a specific way about that. But I just don't really appreciate him being so fast to feel bad about the fans, but not to feel bad. Like when Raven was just saying there, he was really bad to the two female writers. I didn't hear Chris go, "What do you mean by that? I want to know." Or "What did he do?" Or "That's horrible." He did something bad to the female. He just, you can see it. He didn't care. I feel he didn't care. And he wanted to just roll right over it, honestly. Am I wrong about that? Please tell me your opinions, because I'm not saying this is a fact. I'm just saying this is my opinion right now.
Yeah, we're ruining everybody's childhood. Y'all fine now, right?
Wait, what?
But I think that
Wait, I'm gonna rewind this.
Conversations is really important, and
Absolutely.
I really commend all of the people who were brave enough
Nice,
to come
thank you.
forward and
Tell their
say,
truth.
"This was my
Wait.
truth," and also, I mean, I think it's worth.
Wait, I want to watch.
Childhood's ruined because
Oh,
of
welcome. When I was gay, when I came out as gay, I ruined everybody's childhood. Y'all fine now, right?
But I think that having these
Wait, that's
conversations
amazing.
is really important, and I
Absolutely.
really commend all of the people who were brave enough to come forward.
Thank
and tell their
you.
truth. This was my truth, and also, I mean, I think it's worth acknowledging too. A lot of wonderful experience comes from this career. And,
Yeah, it
and
does.
you meet a lot of amazing people, and there are a lot of fantastic people on
Create
set.
friendships for life.
You create
For
friendships
life,
for
yeah.
life. That family can be super strong, but with every good, there is some bad.
I don't think we would have been able to have this kind of conversation years ago. You know,
Yeah.
because of the hashtag Me Too movement and hashtag
Mm-hmm.
Him Too movement, I think we've been able to really put it out
What's
there.
the hashtag Him Too movement?
Put it out there.
Me too.
Me too. Men go through stuff too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Men go through
Yeah.
stuff
And
too.
they don't, I can say, like,
It's sad
when
that
I was younger, under the age of 18, like, there were
It's sad that the Me Too movement got so like, when it came to women. Where when I think about the Me Too movement, I just think of anyone who honestly came forward during that time. And that was also boys, men, non-binary. You know, I just don't think the Me Too movement, but I'm sure maybe because of how it was publicized or how media, I think, interpreted it when it came to Harvey Weinstein and him being a straight dude, that the Me Too movement definitely felt more like a female essay liberation movement. But I do also think of it for everyone. So I just find that interesting. I don't know how you all feel, but I thought Me Too was no gender.
women that were older than me that I was you know, having interactions with that probably should not have happened. Because I was a kid, I did not understand that. I'm like, oh, this girl wants me. But then you realize when you get older, it's like, for men, they look at it as more of like a
Trophy.
It's more of a cool thing. Or if you come forward and say, this woman touched me inappropriately when I was 14, 15, or wanted to have sex with me, then it's like, oh, why are you gonna tell on her? She wanted to, you know. But then when you get older, you realize like, well, that was kind of like not
okay.
Not okay.
cool, right? You know what I
And
mean?
if you make that hashtag, people like Drake Bell can speak out and be
Absolutely.
validated and understand what's going on with
Absolutely.
them, you know. So let's talk about the fact that you are a father, because I just want to
Yes.
let everybody know where you are now and how your life is going,
Yeah.
and if you've
How far are we?
contracted
Okay.
mental health issues because of your experience.
I do have children. I love them to death. And there was a time where people wanted to represent them. They wanted to get them out there, to put them
That was
on.
going to be my question to both of you.
Yeah, and so, you know, at first it was kind of like, okay, cool, like, oh, yeah, but then you kind of like take a step back and you go like, you know what? I really wanted to be on TV, right? Like, I used to watch movies like The Sandlot, all those movies, and I used to be like, I want to do this, like, play baseball all day and get paid. Like, as a young age, I always want to do that. People like Raven and stuff like that. I know I had a conscious choice in saying I wanted to do this, right? Like, my kids don't, I'll ask.
You know, the debate that I have, or the argument that I have with what he's saying, is I do believe that a kid can want to do something, but it doesn't mean that they should. And so when I think back at being a kid and wanting to do things, like sometimes I wanted to really badly, well, when I watch Nova, sometimes she wants to do a flip off the couch, you know, just, and at any moment it looks like she's, my mom hormones, and being a mom, I'm like, ah! And so when I see Nova do that, I have to step in, and I know she really, really wants to do it. And then when I step in and go like, Nova, you're gonna hurt, you know, you're gonna hurt yourself. You can't do this. I really want to do it. I really want to do it. And she really wants to do it. But I know as the adult that she's going to get hurt. And this is just a small example. And so when I'm thinking about kids really wanting to do something, the parent, the adults, now that we're learning, I'm not like victim blaming these adults, the parents, but now that we're learning, right, the what could happen on a set. What could happen when this child turns into an adult after being a child star? Now that we've learned all of these things, now we have to go, I know you really want to do this, but it could be possibly unsafe, and I think it's better for you to just enjoy your childhood. And it's okay to go into theater classes and have this be something that you just enjoy and love to do, not that you're paying, you know, the family, you're making money off of the thing you love to do. I think what's really important as a kid is to be able to do what you love without thinking about the financial aspects of it yet. I feel like that should only happen when you're an adult. When you're an adult, I think then it's time, you know, you can comprehend what's happening. You could be like, oh, I love this so much, I'm gonna do this for a living. And I'm gonna just, I'm all in, or I'm gonna be balancing it with other things. You just like, you make that decision. But as a kid to know, and to be honest with you, the rejection that you have to go through as a child actor can really mess with you. And I do have a lot of memories of just being told no, no, no. And so when you put, and you would memorize, I would memorize like 40 pages sometimes of dialogue for like 3 different auditions the night before, and have to memorize them all, and practicing them all day in the car while going to each audition. And when you don't get that call back, or you don't get the job, you feel, you pretend you don't because you don't want it to show sometimes, and you get tough skin or whatever. But I have a lot of memories of just not didn't make me feel good. And so I just think I don't think a kid needs to be in that scenario. I think they should just enjoy what they're doing, love it for the love of it, and that no one should be exploiting that or taking advantage of that. If that makes sense.
Sometimes I'm like, when they'll watch, because my daughters all watch Zoe 101 and That's So Raven, they love That's So Raven like crazy. The cool thing is about it is like, you ask them sometimes like, oh, would you ever want to do that? Or, you know, and like my daughter Bella, she's like, no, I want to be a rock star.
If I had a kid who at like 3 years old was showing artistic skill and they were saying, I really want to be on TV,
yes.
I'd be like, great. The first thing we're going to do is put you into like a little theater camp.
Everyone
exactly.
looks at being on TV and all this is like, you can be famous, you can make a lot of money and all this, right? But no one ever stops to think of the longevity of what happens to this person, right? The average person right now could go, you know, God forbid, get a DUI, right, on a Thursday afternoon. By Friday, he's out. Saturday, Sunday, he sleeps it off. Monday, he's back to work, right? No one knows unless you tell your boss or you tell your friends. Me or Raven go get a DUI tonight. Everyone's going to know before I can even call my mom and tell her what happened. Once you put them into this spotlight, it's forever. It's not just when you're on the #1 show. It's not just when you're 12. It's for the rest of your life. Everything that you do, every misstep you take, most people can live their lives doing these things and learning from them.
Yes, this is very true. Now, imagine having, this is how I look at it, where, you know, boomers. When I have conversations with my mom about social media, she'll always tell me, I'm so glad there wasn't social media when I was younger, because then, you know, I would be, you know, in Instagram stories, maybe being embarrassing and yada, yada, yada. And so fast forward, there are things that I realized that you know, there's a video of me on YouTube where I'm like talking to fans or whatever, and I'm like whispering and my mom's sleeping. It is so embarrassing for me, but it's forever on the internet, right? And that's because we grew up in the internet age, and you could just upload something onto YouTube back then, or, well, no, it was just YouTube, or MySpace, or Facebook. And so when I look back at that, you're like, oh my God. Now, when it comes to being a public figure as a kid, you smoke, or you have a drink, or, you know, you're with this person. Everything is under a magnifying glass. Everything. And that can put a lot of pressure. And to be honest with you, that happens in adulthood too, with public figures, where people feel that they know you, they love to tell you what they don't like about you and what they do. And they oh, I don't have a good feeling about this person. And we have to read that. And so I do think that regardless of even being a child star, I think, yeah, I don't like celebrity culture whatsoever. And though I think it's very important to know that these people are humans. And sometimes when you just put the word celebrity over them, you can forget they're human. And there can be just a way of talking about the public figures. And I'm not saying some people don't necessarily deserve those things. I'm just saying the ones who are just living their life, and you just have somebody on the internet being like, I'm gonna say exactly how I feel about this person, and go on a whole thread of their past, present, and future, and they act like they know this person when they don't, and they're actually having a parasocial relationship with this person. And when I learned about parasocial relationships, it was so wild, because I started to understand certain people that it's just really trippy. And it's so true, because people can watch these stars, actors, actresses, and think they know them. And especially if they've seen their face when they were super young, they feel like they've grown up with them. And I don't think you're able to even, your brain's not disconnecting the two. They think, oh, because I have this face is familiar and I've seen this person a bunch of times on a TV screen or through their Instagram or through their Facebook or whatever, that now I know this person. When we all know that we barely even know our friends that we haven't seen in a few years. We can't know what they really feel based off their Instagram stories. The virtual realm of existence is not real. It's as real as we want to make it. But most of us, no one can even fully engage in it like that. No one sees you 24/7. No one knows what your inner thoughts are. No one knows you, but you, and honestly, people who are actually very close to you. So I agree with what he's saying there when it comes to just public figures and being a child star. The thoughts I have about the subject as a media student cannot be contained in a message, but people need to think black and white about social media. Yeah, so that's the thing, and I think with social media it's very hard for us to, and we also compare ourselves to people, and I think also a little bit predatory, honestly, the inherited predatory behavior that we can all inherit, sadly, through society, is that we think that we have to bring someone down and compare ourselves to people constantly. And with social media, it's so easy to just see so many people living so many different types of lives that why isn't my life like Casey_Allen96 on, I'm just making up a random name, on Instagram. And it's very true. And in the 1800s, you were just comparing yourself to the person who was down the block, not comparing yourself to millions of people on the internet that you will never meet, never know, and have no idea who they actually are.
But when we do it, it's, can you believe they did this?
One of the original cast members of All That said that, her parents got a call from the producer saying she was getting too fat, and she was like, oh my God. And then literally she was like, I was in the middle of puberty. A month later, I got my first period, and then I became kind of a woman, and then I was too womanly. And I think that is also super intense when you are that vulnerable and then having commentary on your body, let alone your mishaps. Like, Lindsay Lohan, right? Who saw.
Let's just talk about this for a second. When you were a child star, you weren't even allowed to lose a tooth. Yeah, you hear me right? You weren't able to lose a tooth. So if you lost a tooth, it was like, oh, they're about to lose a tooth and not be able to work unless you have enough money to get flippers. And flippers were these fake teeth that were almost like a retainer, and you would slide it in and it would grow. You have to go every week, once a week, to the dentist, and he would, as your tooth grew, he would, shape it so that it grew with your tooth. And that's because they did not even want to see kids. You have to be perfect all the fucking time, is what I'm trying to say. You can't even lose a tooth, which is supposed to be fun when you're a kid. The tooth fairy, the this, the that, it's underneath your bed, underneath your pillow. Mine was stressful. It was like, my mom made it fun, like with the tooth fairy thing, but I remember having to go to the dentist every time and to get this flipper, and the flipper would, in one day, the tooth would grow, and having to go back and get it molded and the whole thing. So, and they were expensive. And you know how long a tooth takes to grow? It was a while. And the industry would not accept you and continuity issue and the whole, ridiculous.
In court multiple times.
And people think that their child is going to be different. We all go through the same mental health issue, which is...
Are you saying all child
stars go through the
this?
same mental health issue? It's a silent underneath layer of, I always have to live up to what other people need me to be and see and entertain.
Absolutely.
Even if I'm no longer entertaining in front of the television. I don't know if you've experienced this, but when you took your step back, did you feel like you needed to be the life of the party? Did you feel like you needed to live up to the Chris Massey that everybody knows?
There are certain people, right, who grew up in stardom, right? I've been on tour with Raven, having to be ushered through the hallways of screaming girls everywhere and all this, right? But what happens is...
that image, though.
is in this realm that we're in, some people were not mentally strong enough to accept when their reign is over, right? When their superstardom has now dwindled to, oh, hey, you're the guy from, I used to love that show.
Yeah.
When it becomes that, certain people who are addicted to the lights and the action and everything, they can't dial it back and live a normal life.
When you're a kid and your brain is developing and you become addicted to that dopamine hit,
It's
that
terrible.
thrill, like
Look,
it's just
there are
true.
days when I wake up and I'm like, man, I'm not where I'm supposed to be because of the
You do
idea.
that all the
I do it all the time
time.
because of the idea of what I was told I should be.
Yep.
And when I see others that
Was that
look
like an
me,
edit in the video? That was so strange. But yeah, that is true. I do think that people do end up, I think that specifically happens with Disney and Nickelodeon. And not all of them now, because they go into music and there's all these different avenues for them to explore if their show is finished. And we've, like Miley Cyrus, for example, or Selena Gomez or Ariana Grande. But I think for the most part, like for me, I did move on. Once I left Zoe 101, then I started to work on other shows. And it just, Zoe 101 was already so quickly a thing of the past for me that when it was a thing of the past for me, I barely noticed. It was like, oh yeah, like I haven't done that show for how long now? Like I've done so many other things since then. And so I had a little bit of a different experience, but I did see other child stars have a different way of depression or addiction ended up coming into the picture. And I did see a lot of different responses and reactions to having their careers no longer be the same. And that has a lot to do also with just the industry itself and agents and managers and all of these adults that just people in general that really only care about you when you are hot. They used to call it, you know, oh, you're hot right now. You're on you're just getting them booking. And once you're not, they don't help you remember your value as a human. They just want you to get back into booking those jobs so that they can make their 10%, 15%. And I think that's outside of Hollywood as well. I think that's in most industries. It is, where we all feel that a lot of our value is based off of what we're doing constantly. And I think it makes everyone feel like shit when that's the basis of our value, when it so isn't true. We're so much more than what we do.
have bigger careers than me, even though it came faster and mine is a slower process. It's taken me almost 38 years to be like, hey, I don't have to necessarily have the same fame as someone. I can still succeed in this industry. I just have to pivot. Every single day, the conversation was, you better keep going, otherwise you're going to work at a place that you don't want to work and you're going to be embarrassed. And you better be on your shit and do the right thing, because if you do the wrong thing, you're going to get fired and you're not going to make the money that you're, like, it was that scare tactic.
It's the keeping
that's
you
horrible.
on the train.
What do you do, Mom? What do you do, Dad? And telling me that you're my manager, in my mind, is not enough of an answer to make me go, oh, okay, you right.
Well, that's hard, right? There's a two.
And sorry, all the parents hate me right now.
No, there's a double-edged sword. There's a double-edged sword, because
is.
this is what you're supposed to do. I am making sure that you're taken care of. And the other side of it is exactly what you're saying. I was so young to make this decision. What if my life was supposed to be something else, but now I have this brain situation where I'm always going to be here? Some parents are so helicoptery that even as I become an adult,
I feel like Raven's mic needs to be closer. Am I wrong? Doesn't Raven sound so far away from the mic?
Yeah.
It's wild. Why is it so far from who's got this set up? I'm constantly having to literally go like this, and I'm seeing how far away it is. I'm like, no wonder why we can barely hear Raven.
Yeah, it's all of them.
away and let me live my life because of this. Some parents disappear fully and not help the child grow mentally to where they can't take care of themselves, and then you see the people fall. So there has not been good education on either side of the sword in order
100%.
to create a safe space. I had a song a long time ago, never released it, but it was Hollywood is Thicker Than Blood. Because at the end of the day,
Wow, that's
you
a powerful
will
statement.
lose a family member of some kind. Doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah.
Because
It's-
I'm talking
Raven
about
is speaking from the future.
You ain't paying me.
So good.
You my
Oh,
cousin.
okay. Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I just came to kick you.
Raven is speaking from the future. That was so good. That was so good. Tariq.
Well, where my money at?
Yeah,
You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like
No,
any
it's
type of
true.
you will always lose a family member of
Yeah.
some kind.
Understood.
in any kind of way.
That's true.
What would you have wanted to be different, if anything, or what do you think could have been different for those people to prevent some of the negative of working child actor?
You have to protect your child at all times. I'll say this. Someone asked me, it was like, well, you were on a Dan Snyder show. Would you put your kids on a Dan Snyder TV
Oh,
series?
what is he gonna say?
And my answer was, if my child experienced the exact same thing that I experienced on the set, I would say yes. But obviously now there's a lot more stuff that's going on.
You would be there with your kids to
I'm
make
going
sure
to
that
be
experience
there the
happens.
way my dad was on set. When if
There are so many things in place now that were not in place when we were actually before every season, every single sitcom, especially with children, there is a mandatory health and safety meeting through lawyers to explain what quid pro quo is, to explain what diversity is about. These meetings are brand new. And there's things that you're like, obviously that did not happen with Dan Schneider. I remember.
Yeah, no, like we didn't learn any of this shit, honestly, when working on any set. There was no set that went, okay, this is what happens if you get SH'd. You know, there's SH happening and this is how you report it. This is how you make a formal complaint. Never did anyone ever teach us any of that. If someone's acting a very specific way that's making you feel uncomfortable, this is how you go. Literally not one time on any set did anyone ever check in like that. And so it is pretty interesting that now obviously these meetings are happening, but for me personally, I feel like the reason why those meetings, those teachings weren't happening was because predators definitely did not want those meetings happening. And for the most part, a lot of predators get put into powerful positions. And so they'll be the ones who are really making that decision. Let's think about bringing someone in here to make sure that people know what SH is and what SA is. And a predator is like, no, if no one's asking for it, I'm definitely not going to be just suggesting how to basically get justice or get me fired. Like if the person is a predator, they're like, I'm not going to show them the way to take my safe haven away. And so now, because of the Me Too movement, there's pressure onto these predators. And so they're having to do things. And thank God for that. But it's just wild to think, like, for example, Nickelodeon knew about Jason Handy, then Brian Peck. Like, these things happened right before I worked for Nickelodeon. And they didn't do any protocols, precautionary tools, classes for the children after knowing that so many predators have gotten access to children from their network. And not one person thought, okay, let's just make sure that we're letting kids know that predators can be on set. Because no, they wanted to protect the company. And they knew that if they were letting parents know that there were past predators on set, it might make parents a little bit uneasy about wanting to, like, for example, if what happened to Drake Bell then was happening now, right? There could be a lawsuit. And but back then that wasn't even we didn't even know who was held accountable for things, who should be, or how to make a formal complaint. We didn't know any of this. And then later you start to learn, oh, wow, there are these rules in place to make sure institutions are handling their business properly, like actually standing on business, making sure people feel safe in the work environment.
The season of a show that I was on with kids, I'm not going to say what, when, how, but I remember the parents not coming to set. And I stopped and I said, I need every parent on this set. No, they don't need to be there. It's safe. I said, no.
Yeah.
You could be in the stands. You
Yep.
could be sitting down there. You can do whatever you need
Yeah.
to. But for a child, knowing their parent is there, if their parent isn't toxic, is safe.
Absolutely.
And then there's the double-edged sword of your school teacher being a social worker. And there are some amazing school teachers who witness a toxic family environment and help that child get through it. And that's also very important, because let's not forget about toxicity at home and abusive nature at
Absolutely.
home. Working a child for different reasons than our parent did,
Right.
and not being taken
Shia
care of
LaBeouf.
and secure. Shia LaBeouf, the girl from Modern Family. There's so many stories, and it's scary because
Jeanette
kids,
McCurdy. I mean, that was huge. That book she
Yeah,
wrote.
kids
that
are
book
not
is
safe in general.
But
It's
did
a
you
big
read that book?
conversation.
Wait. Chris was like, I didn't watch the doc, but I read Jeanette McCurdy's book. Chris, do you see him? He's like, oh, I didn't read that one either, or didn't look at that one either. Wouldn't you know in that one, it wasn't just about, there were a big part of that, obviously, was her childhood and with her mom, but there was a pretty noticeable section where Dan Schneider was a full-on creep. And she was pretty honest about that. And see, this was a while ago. This was before the doc. Like, just what? That book is crazy. Yeah, when bros say that, they don't know what they're talking about. That's the filler, word for a lot of bros out there, honestly. Oh, yeah, that was crazy. You're like, what does that even mean? What does that even mean?
It's super layered, and clearly it's too big for us to cover and touch on everything today. And it just really goes so deep. But I thank you so much for sitting down with us. We have to toast.
Toast?
We always toast. Let's make a toast.
Toast.
Yay.
Wait.
Today, I want to toast to the both of you.
Aw, babes, why?
Thank you.
Me first.
No, I'm going to toast you
Rick first, then me.
collectively.
Oh,
Today,
okay.
the toast goes to Raven and Kyle. I mean,
Oh, shit.
Damn.
Raven and Chris.
Wait, I missed it. Wait, what was the joke?
I think because isn't his name Chris?
Raven.
Oh,
She said his brother on accident.
right. That's okay. So that he didn't say
Hold on,
much.
can you just scroll down and just look at the comments real quick?
Yeah, I'm already scrolled down. I'm at the bottom.
No, the comments of the video.
Oh, on the video, I was like, wait, something's in the chat. Let's see. I can't wait to see Alexis Nikolas' reaction to this. Wait, I'm the first comment. You guys. And then people are getting pissed. They're like, oh, and Alexa had to comment on this thing. Well, because I'm the first person that people are asking to comment on the thing. He said nothing. He said nothing. He didn't even watch the doc, sir. All he did was bring Raven into the mess now. He didn't say anything. I mean, honestly, did he say anything at all? He also just said that book was crazy. I will watch for Raven. I love that. It was a very boogie-coded interview. So Chris Massey admits all the start he didn't even watch Quiet on Set, yet he reached out to Raven to come on her pod to speak about an issue he hasn't even educated himself about. It's wild! What is happening? He didn't really say anything. He didn't even watch the doc to know what was said or rewatch the clips they were discussing. Some of the weird foot fetish stuff happened on his show. And Quinn! Remember Quinn with the... And I feel so uncomfortable doing that. But you know what I'm talking about. That was in front of... And Chris Massey's line is giving her a D grade or... And it's a innuendo again. you're like, whoa, 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 whoa. That was on while Chris was there. And so for him to not even say, hey, there are a few things that now when I look back as a parent, I don't really like the kids were being looked at like that, being exploited like that. Now, why would he come on the show without seeing I love that everyone's just like, why didn't he watch the goddamn documentary?
It's so cringy that he didn't. It's
And
like,
yes.
it's such an easy thing to do, and then you can just disagree with it if you don't. If
Right.
you feel the same way, just watch the doc and then say the things you feel, but you're like invalidating yourself when you haven't watched it.
Correct. Because then you have nothing really to add because you haven't watched it. So your opinion is pre the doc. Like your opinion is without the information.
And there's more than just the weird clips in the doc. There's like there's new information that comes out with the writer, and you know, there's just other stuff to be known.
Constantly happening. And Jeanette McCurdy is so true. And he worked with me. I was in Zoe 101 too, and had not a good experience and came forward about it a while ago. And just saying, Disney Channel and Nickelodeon crossover. Okay, true. I'm sorry this felt so disconnected from the doc. You didn't mention Dan making Ariana pouring water on herself upside down while... Yes. Exactly. By the way, Raven, you didn't ruin my childhood when you came out. Amazing. Oh my God, it's blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I guess like the top ones though, is that I need to react to this, but also that he didn't really know what he was talking about. He was just trying to say basically the same thing that his mom honestly was kind of saying, which is she said she's not going to watch the doc. She didn't watch the doc. She hasn't watched the doc, and then praising Dan Schneider. All the while, brave people have come forward with their experiences, and they should be valid and supported too. Just it's a bummer. I was expecting a little bit more from that interview. I was also hoping that maybe there was a little bit more questions, like Raven asked. I did appreciate Miranda's perspective throughout the interview for the most part. I feel like Miranda understood that the documentary was disturbing and that we as a society do need to take note of what happened there and know that this person was not okay to work with and that was beyond toxic, inappropriate. SH when it comes to the massage. And so I think Miranda really, and I think Raven did too, but Chris, like, whatever, maybe you know what? It will be so interesting when he finally does watch the doc. I'm hoping that when he finally watches it, he's like, what? That had nothing to do with what I was saying on the Raven Symone podcast. I didn't scratch any of the surface of what was in that doc at all in that interview. And I think before people are talking about things, at the very least, before commenting on it, please just look into it yourself and see if this is something to know how to comment on it. Like, how can you comment on something you don't know what it is even? So it just bums me out when I see Chris Massey doing that. And honestly, I was pretty bummed out by Chris Massey's mom for how she was behaving and just treating the people who came forward in the doc. And it's just a bummer. It's just, and no one, from my knowledge, has anyone other than Jack from Zoe 101, has any of them said anything about Quiet? Oh, Matt Underwood. That's right. God, how can I forget that? God, that was like one of the most, but I was just curious because I'm like, because we have a huge cast. So I think ours was like one of the bigger casts. When I think about iCarly, like you just think of like the two leads, and then when you think of Drake and Josh, two leads. But Zoe 101, we had a huge cast. I mean, what? Over 6 leads, I think? Even in one dorm room, it was 3 of us. So we had a pretty... Oh, Abby Wilde, too. That's right. Abby Wilde. Oh, just saw Alexa on Extra on TV. Was it Access Hollywood? Did it air? I think there's a part 2 tonight. That's something... Well, we can also watch that tomorrow a little bit because I'm curious to see what the parts ended up looking like. I'm not sure if anyone got to see it, but I got to sit down and kind of tell my story because in the documentary, my story wasn't told. And so it has been very healing to be asked on certain platforms to tell my story and have it heard, because I think, I mean, all of our stories are just so important to the whole thing. Like, one story really should not be left out of it because I think they're all so connected and will have such an impact when it comes to how do we safeguard against predators? How do we make sure bystanders are supported and not punished? How do we fix HR? 30 seconds to HR. How do we fix 30 seconds to HR? You know, how do we... There's so much work to do, and I think it starts with the stories being told, if they can, and if obviously the person feels comfortable doing that, and then society and the people listening. And those are the first steps, I think. And nothing can change really without those two steps. So I felt it was very healing to be able to say my story and what happened. And I saw someone in the comments the other day saying that why my mom didn't sit down. She did. She actually did sit down and just ended up not. And a couple people I think did that weren't. So my mom did, though. My mom did sit down. And I'm thinking actually if one day I should film my mom's experience, because I really want my mom's voice to be heard, because her experience was not good. And she was out there trying to protect me. She was one of those parents that was not taking shit from, honestly, Nickelodeon, and really trying to advocate for me and have my best interests in mind. And she has a lot to say about that story, or that set environment in general. So I'm thinking, do you think I should do that? I feel like I should just film my... Yeah, I want to hear what your mom had to see. Yes, please do. Okay, I'm going to do that. Maybe in the next couple months. Mom, you're going to be sitting down and I'm going to be interviewing you. But it was so sad. My mom, sat down for hours and it was super re-traumatizing. And apparently she said she was crying and it was a lot for her. She even turned it down multiple times. My mom turned it down multiple times, did not want to go on because it was going to be re-traumatizing. And then they, the whole thing. And then she sat down and she was a little bit, I was like, I'm sorry, Mom. It's horrible, right? When you telling our stories, it's a lot of emotional labor that honestly goes unnoticed for the most part. And so I do want to give a little bit of a shout out to all survivors out there that have even just told their story to a friend, to their dog even, or their cat. Anytime we are having to revisit that traumatic event, it's a lot. And I think society, because it kind of rolls over it, we can sometimes forget that every time we are talking about it, remembering it, it's a lot of emotional labor. And so I just want to give a shout out to all the survivors out there, because anytime we're remembering what happened to us and anytime we're sharing our story, it's putting a lot on us. And we always need to make sure that even if maybe others aren't valuing that emotional labor, that we remind ourselves to, and to be very gentle with ourselves and make sure that we're acknowledging that it's not easy, ever, remembering or revisiting in any type of way what happened to you. And so when survivors come forward, it is so empowering, because we know if you're a survivor, emotionally, internally, what that survivor is having to endure just to share the story, just to tell it. Power to survivors! Yeah. Power to survivors. Power to survivors. Thank you all for being here. I'm glad that we got to watch Chris Massey Talk about the doc, talking about not watching the doc, but having an opinion that's not really an opinion about the doc. That's kind of what I picked up on that entire episode. But I will see you all tomorrow. Oh, is there something? Wait, is there something in the Discord? Okay, let me check it out. It says 9:42 to, hold on. 9:42 to what?
Kids were more protected. Nope, the Coogan Act remained unchanged for 62
oh, yeah,
years.
this is
until
important,
2000,
actually.
The year of our Lord, 2000.
Wait,
Those
9:42. Okay.
The kid became a global star and earned upwards of $4 million as a child. His mother and stepfather squandered all of it, leaving him destitute. At 23, he sued his parents and won, but after legal fees, he recovered a total of $126,000 from his original fortune. Around the same time, Shirley Temple was made to star in baby burlesques as a toddler, at one point portraying a sex worker. And if the toddlers misbehaved, they would be shoved in a black box with a block of ice to sit on.
What?
In 1941, at the age of 13, Shirley Temple was signed by MGM, and on her first...
What? First of all, by the way, let's give a shout out to this content creator, Leija Miller. Make sure to subscribe. Wow, this is unbelievable. What?
To the studio, the producer Arthur Freed exposed himself to her, and she giggled at what she saw because she was a 13-year-old, and he threw her out of his office.
No!
By the time she was 17, her golden hair had faded, she chain smoked, and she got married to a 24-year-old she had met 2 years prior when she was 15. The public lost interest in her. As one film historian observed, she had become an unremarkable teenager. At 22, she asked her father, who acted as her manager,
An unremarkable teenager? Like, who says that?
much of her $3.4 million she made as a child actor was left. His answer? $44,000. When Judy Garland turned 13 in 1935, she signed with MGM, whose male executives said she was ugly and fat and made her wear caps on her teeth and rubberized discs on her nose to help reshape it. Oh, and they also pumped her full of amphetamines to help her lose weight. She would then have to take barbiturates to fall asleep after a long day of taking speed, leading to a lifelong pill dependency that started when she was 15. At 17, to prep for her role in The Wizard of Oz, Garland was given a diet of chicken soup, black coffee, cigarettes, and diet pills. At the age of 47, she died.
Whoa. Whoa.
Penniless of a barbiturate overdose. 80s child actor Corey Feldman began his acting career at the age of 3. As he hit puberty, his mother put him on diet pills to keep him from gaining weight. His big break came in the mid-80s with a series of incredibly successful films, including Gremlins, The Goonies, and Stand By Me. During that time, he also experienced sexual abuse at the hands of an adult man who had been hired to be his assistant. He would frequent LA clubs that let in underage Hollywood elite, where he also experienced sexual abuse. During this time, he began to experiment heavily with drugs, starting with cocaine and eventually turning to crack and heroin. By 1990, he was on street corners in LA selling his CDs to get his hands on drug money. Corey Haim rose to prominence at the same time as Corey Feldman, leading to their moniker The Two Coreys. He landed his first roles in the early 80s and gained considerable fame as a heartthrob by the middle of the decade. He claimed to have had his first beer on set filming the teen dramedy Lucas in 1985.
Oh, someone gifted 1 membership, James Watson. Thank you so much for oh, who got it? Gabriel? That's so sweet. Thank you. Wow, this is wild.
14 years old. He too experienced assault around this time, though the details were never clear. Haim and Feldman starred in The Lost Boys in 1987, and the two became fast friends. He formed a cocaine addiction that also led to crack, and by the 2000s, his career had fizzled. His addiction spiraled to opioid use, and he began selling his teeth and hair online for extra money. Corey Haim died of a drug overdose in 2010 at the age of 38. Drew Barrymore found considerable fame at 7 years old with the success of E.T. Her father was a violent alcoholic. Her mother took her to Studio 54 when she was 9 years old. There, she began experimenting with drugs and alcohol, becoming a self-described party girl before the age of 12. By 13, she was suicidal. She was placed in a mental institution for 18 months, after which she sought emancipation from her parents and supported herself at 14 with menial jobs cleaning toilets and working in restaurants to pay rent for her own apartment.
Wait, I didn't even know this.
Exile, at 17, she made a comeback that frankly is probably the most impressive child actor comeback in Hollywood history. Macaulay Culkin landed his first acting roles in the mid-80s when he was 4 years old. world. In 1990, at the age of 10, he landed his role in Home Alone, making him the biggest child star in the world. In the midst of this fame, Culkin became close friends with Michael Jackson, whose relationships with young boys have been known for decades at this point. While Culkin says that Jackson never touched him, he did admit to sharing a bed with Jackson at least 10
By the way, that is are going to be our movie night this Friday is Leaving Neverland. And so that's for the dinner party members and up. And so we'll be watching that this Friday because that just reminded me when seeing that.
And staying overnight at Jackson's mansion. At the same time, Culkin's father was said to be an abusive tyrant who was prone to threaten and humiliate his 7 children. Soon, a lengthy custody battle ensued in which Culkin's parents spent a large amount of the fortune he had earned as a child actor on court fees. In 1995, at the age of 15, Culkin took his parents to court and won emancipation and control over his $17 million fortune. And that's all before the events depicted in Quiet on Set at Nickelodeon unfolded. More recent examples from the last few decades include Britney Spears' public meltdown and subsequent conservatorship, Lindsay Lohan's battles with eating disorders, substance abuse, and more, and Amanda Bynes' dramatic fall from grace after being one of the most famous actors in Hollywood in the early 2000s. She starred in banger after banger, including Big Fat Liar, What a Girl Wants, and She's the Man, before experiencing substance abuse issues and exhibiting bizarre behavior like starting a small fire in the driveway of a stranger in Thousand Oaks, ultimately culminating in mental health hospitalization and a conservatorship under her parents' control.
I feel so bad. It like kind of upsets me when people are talking about people's like mental health. Like I just like to kind of.
That's the dream, girl. Go get them. And so we have decades and decades of proof.
Because also when I look at Amanda Bynes now, I just see freedom, and I think women. Yes, of course, Amanda Bynes was going through what she was going through, but I also think it's important for us to understand that. When I look at how Amanda Bynes, she didn't have to be in the industry. If she didn't want to be in anymore and she wanted to, now she wants to be a nail artist, which is so fucking awesome. If she wants to do that, she should do that. I just think whenever we use the language around, oh, she was in this and this and this, and then she fell from grace, it kind of is, the language around it I don't necessarily like because I feel like it could hurt the person's feelings of feeling like I fell from grace instead of being like, you know, this person was going through something. And I don't know what the exact words is, but I just, whenever I hear that, oh, you know, fell from grace and mental health this, and then it goes into the whole thing and you're just like, ah. And it's just sad that public figures have to have these moments that happened within their life be everyone knows about it and like has an opinion on it and then can just like put, you know, you're like, ah. Just the mental health thing makes me always a little bit.
Fallen stars of tons and tons of child celebrities to show that being a child star can lead to very, very dark places. And while it can almost sound comical that a teenage Judy Garland was given a diet of chicken soup, cigarettes, and speed, like, they were crazy in the 30s, it's truly not that far off from the abuses experienced by child stars in the 80s and 90s who were
for sure
assaulted, exploited, and forced into incredibly uncomfortable situations in the name of fame.
Right.
The main way to combat this abuse of power by industry execs and parents and everyone in between is through regulation. Regulation, written by lawmakers, is preferable because in its absence, the major studios basically get to govern themselves.
Brooklyn literal, since I think Miko's not necessarily in that right now. If you can email epredators@gmail.com. We had a little raffle going on earlier, and so you got this one. So if you do want it, just email epredators@gmail.com with your address, and we will send it out to you on Friday. Okay, let's continue.
And we all know what happens when private companies are given that much free reign. For a long time prior to the growth of the movie industry, there weren't any laws governing child actors. Hell, there weren't any laws governing child labor generally. That was a product of the Industrial Revolution, and many years of organizing for labor standards and practices that protected workers and children. Before those laws were passed, children in entertainment and really in society were largely treated like tiny adults who were ready for hard labor the moment they had the dexterity for it in their tiny little baby fingies. Child mortality was so high that emotional attachment to children children was pretty limited. Until the mid-1800s, children rarely were given funerals, and the idea of childhood as a sensitive time meant for important development was a result of the Industrial Revolution, when the simultaneous advent of the camera and the assembly line meant that people were getting first-hand glimpses of the hard life of a child factory worker whose tiny hands were often used for dangerous jobs that adults couldn't complete.
Wow, so actual photography itself is that's so interesting, because people were able to see and look at it objectively and go, that doesn't look good. That doesn't look right at all, actually.
To a philanthropic movement and the beginning of seeing children as the object of pity to be protected from the evils of the world. One of the first laws passed to protect children was the codification of the infancy doctrine in California in 1872. The infancy doctrine had a long history in common law, that is, law that judges made up as opposed to laws written by lawmakers, and it holds that children, being under 18 and therefore assumed by law that due to their age they are incapable of understanding the contents of a contract, had the right to pull out of a contract they've signed at any time for any reason. So contracts with children weren't legally binding, but only to the children. The party contracting with the children was obligated to follow through and could not cancel the contract the same way children could. This meant that in California, at the dawning of the film industry, film studios wanted young child actors to act in their new motion pictures, but they weren't really interested in doing so because any kid they signed could screw them over. This was especially so by the 1920s, when the film industry was—
Interesting. So that makes sense. A kid should be able to pull away. Like, consent should be, you can revoke consent. Be like, okay. And also, kids can't even give consent. So the whole thing is just so freaking just weird. Kids should not be working,
system,
period.
Which actors received long-term contracts to star exclusively in one studio's movies for a period of usually 7 years. Children, however, could sign those contracts and then jump ship whenever they wanted. So the film industry put pressure on the government of California, and in 1927, the state removed minors' rights to disaffirm contracts so long as the contract was approved by a county superior court judge. There was, of course, no standards set for what the contract should look like, so the studio heads just had to find a judge who would approve the contract, and bada bing, bada boom, that baby has legal obligations. Then along came Jackie Coogan, remember the 5-year-old star from Charlie Chaplin's The Kid? And at 23—
And this is the Coogan, and to be quite honest with you, there are loopholes in the Coogan. Like, the parent could then say, oh, I'm going to take 20% or whatever because I'm your manager, and then now the parent is able to dip in via the percentage. So there are still loopholes. Like, you think, oh, Coogan, like, oh, okay, you know, this money's going to be tucked away. I was lucky a lot of my money was tucked away. But some kids, I think it was Jeanette McCurdy. Yeah, it was Jeanette McCurdy who said, I'm pretty positive. Yeah, Jeanette McCurdy said that when she turned 18 years old, that there was essentially nothing in her bank account because her mom never registered for the Coogan account. And you're like, oh, all that child labor and then nothing there. And Jeanette is so, and I'm not saying, I mean, Jeanette also turned down that non-disclosure agreement from Nickelodeon and Dan Schneider, $300-something thousand. That's why I'm such a fan of Jeanette McCurdy, honestly, because just so kick-ass and just really went through it.
1938, he sued his parents and won, but only a measly $126,000 of his multi-million-dollar fortune. Because of his fame and the optics of this case, the California legislature quickly pushed through the Coogan Act. This act gave judges the discretion to require—
Oh, wait, sorry. I'll wait for you to— No, you're fine.
That contracts with children set aside some of the child's income in a trust fund or savings account not to be touched until the child came of age. And this money was to be taken from the child's net income after management and other fees had already been subtracted. This act was a first step towards protecting child actors, but left many loopholes. Judges had discretion to create a trust account, but they weren't required to. The amount in savings being taken from the child's net proceeds meant that managers and others got a big slice of the pie before the child's percentage could ever be put into savings. And parents began acting as managers, assistants, talent coaches, whatever.
So that's how they were able to get around. And also, it's a little bit of a— it's just a hard situation because a lot of these parents, and this is— it's complicated, it's complex, there's a lot of layers to this, but a lot of these parents end up having to then take these kids to all of these auditions throughout the day, which means they're not having a job anymore. Their job is to make sure the kid is protected and going to the auditions with the kid and hopefully protecting the kid, right? And so they lose their job. They don't have their job. They don't have a job. Now the kid is the breadwinner. The parent is not. And so who, though, is going to pay the bills when we all know acting, the entertainment industry specifically, is the most fickle industry there is. There's so much competition, so many people going for your same role, sometimes thousands, and you're not always working. There's months that go by where you're not working. And so what are the parents doing? And so then what I think ends up happening is a lot of these parents end up becoming managers, this, that, so that they can sustain that in-between time when the kid's not getting paid. This is why this should never happen. This should not happen. Coogan is only 15%. I gotta start really writing down things to start really implementing, because it's just a fucking mess. And the fact that children are just cogs in the wheel, honestly, when it comes to the industry, and no one has really done anything. Quiet on Set, I really feel like, is the first, what's the word I'm looking for? Catalyst for this conversation to start being had. But it's too late for some. It's too late for some people. But this is wild that we're in 2024 and it looks like we don't even have protection laws to protect children within the entertainment industry. It's just awful.
In order to get a cut of the proceeds before it ever hit the kid's bank account. And I'm sure you're like, all right, Legia, but the Coogan Act was passed in 1938. Surely they quickly saw those loopholes and reworked the law so kids were more protected. Nope. The Coogan Act remained unchanged for 62 years until 2000. The year of our Lord, 2000. Those kids you saw being exploited and Quiet on Set, yeah, they were protected by a weak-ass 60-year-old law. All your favorite child stars of the 80s and 90s had the same level of protection as when Judy Garland was being force-fed cigarettes and diet pills on the set of The Wizard of Oz. In the year 2000, the law was amended so that now it's required that a minimum of 15% of the child's earnings be placed in a trust fund. This is no longer the discretion of the judge. It's required. Additionally, that 15% must come out of the child's gross income, not their net income. So 15% gets set away before any managers or other succubus adults trying to siphon money from a child can get their grubby little hands on it. And the income earned is seen as the property of the child, not of the child's parent or guardian. So greater protections are now being given to a child actor's financial security, but what about labor laws? The Fair Labor Standards Act, or FLSA, was also passed at the federal level in 1938, same year as the Coogan Act. The FLSA, among other things, created the right to minimum wage and overtime pay.
Wow, I didn't even know any of this.
Minors in oppressive child labor.
That's another thing, is when I think back at what I knew when I was a child star, it's like I didn't even fucking know any of this.
Yeah, you assume the laws are there to protect you.
Right.
And that they're going to.
Right. And you're like, wait a minute. And then you're an adult and you're like, they don't give an F about me, honestly, whatsoever. They're actually trying to find ways to exploit me and get the most out of me for the little pay. And it's really scary. Like, I didn't even really understand the Coogan was just 15%. The way that everyone talked about it was like it was this miraculous thing that protected children. And so the kids are doing all this work and it's only 15% that the actual person doing the work gets paid. I mean, that's just wild.
But you know what the FLSA didn't apply to? The entertainment industry. Big old exception. No child laborers, but oh, Hollywood, you're good. Keep doing what you're doing. Babies in black boxes sitting on ice cubes, that's fine. Nothing to see here, and it still doesn't apply to the entertainment industry. So child actors are left to state law to protect them. California, being the central hub for the entertainment industry, has laws to set labor standards for child actors, but 17 states still have no laws protecting child actors. So if a child actor is shooting a film in Arizona, for example, there's no law to protect them other than Arizona's standard adult labor protection laws. Where there are child actor labor laws, like in California, for example, there are some strict guidelines that studios must abide by. In California, children can only work a certain number of hours hours depending on their age. So babies can be on set for 2 hours a day but can only film for 20 minutes a day. Children 6 to 8 years old can be on set for 8 hours a day but can only work for 4 hours when school is in session and 6 hours when school is not in session. Child
Right.
actors are required to get a permit in order to work.
Correct.
On-set educators are required, and 3 hours must be set aside every working day for schooling. The on-set teacher also acts as an additional guardian for the child, keeping an eye on their safety and acting as a mandatory reporter. Child actors get regular breaks and meals, 10-minute breaks for every 4 hours, and a meal period must occur within 6 hours of the minor arriving at work. And if the child is 15 or under, a parent or guardian must be on set and within sight and sound of the child at all times. But even with those protections in place, as we saw in the quiet
Yeah, but
on-set
that's also pretty vague. Like, has to be on site within, like, then you can just have like a monitor. You're not necessarily right by your kid. Like, it's a little bit of a vague description. I feel like it's mandatory that the parent has to be within a certain feet, like I think it has to be like feet. Like, not like too much time on your feet, Dan. But you get what I'm saying. Like, there has to be a specific space between you and your child, because I feel like a network or a studio would be able to kind of get around that vague language and just say, oh, well, if you can hear them, here's a walkie, you know, and then you're not like making sure or enforcing to make sure that the parent can see their kid. Welcome, Alexis. Welcome to the dinner party. I remember Charlie Chaplin, hi Venus, helped a child star Jackie Coogan. Look up the Coogan Bill. Yeah, we were, that was pretty much what we were just learning about. And also, isn't Charlie Chaplin the one who is marrying 14-year-old girls, if I remember correctly? Like, legit 14-year-old girls. So creepy. I remember reading that one day and being like, Charlie Chaplin? Like, continue, like 14, 15 over and over again. These people.
Documentary, abuses still happen. Parents were silenced or shunned if they put up too much of a fuss. And groomers with power and powerful connections are good at isolating children despite their parents' best efforts.
Totally.
According to the docuseries, Drake Bell's dad sounded alarm bells immediately because of the behavior of the man who would then go on to use Drake. But slowly...
Yeah, and see, that's... I'm going to end it there because I think that's what's so important to understand is as we learn through people's stories about what went wrong, we can learn then, okay, this is where someone is overlooking something. Purposefully or not doesn't even necessarily matter. Now we all know that this is a way that, like, for example, when I heard Drake Bell's dad say that he went to someone at Nickelodeon and shared his concerns, and now fast forward, Nickelodeon, the same person who he went to is now the president of Nickelodeon, Brian Robbins, and Karen, whatever Fisher, whatever her name is. I keep forgetting her name. Karen Fisher, I think it is. You know, after hearing that Brian Robbins now is telling the world that if it is a formal complaint, we will take it seriously. Well, why didn't you make sure, that's your job, Brian and Karen, was to make a formal complaint when there are issues, concerns about someone acting inappropriate with a child? And we also learned from Dee Dee, that other person who has come forward, about what they experienced and reporting Brian Peck on multiple sets. Again, when it comes to a Brian Robbins set. And so people knew, but didn't do anything about it. They knew enough and didn't make sure a formal complaint. And that's something that's on my radar now, is that we are making sure that children know how this works. How do they make a formal complaint? How do they, you know, what their rights are? Kids were not, I don't know if they are now, really doubt it. We were not taught what our rights were on set. But if something, you know, if I had to, there was one scene where I had to throw a vase at someone on Zoe 101. God, what episode was it? And it was made of like sugar cane, so that when it didn't hurt, but it was still kind of scary, to be honest, and it didn't feel good just because it was made out of sugar. But I remember there was a whole tutorial, right, where the set props It's like, okay, this is what this is what it's made out of, this is what it's gonna feel like. I want you to feel this first. But then there was no, when those things happened, those were mandatory. But when it came to teaching kids how to advocate for themselves, what their rights were, these things were never given the time and space. So there's a lot of work to do. That's why I'm really hoping that this is not a trend. The quiet on set, these issues are not a trend, and that we all collectively, when the time comes to execute that, we really pass some legislation and really change law and make sure that children are protected at all times in every way we possibly can, and not allow these institutions to find their usual fucking loopholes when it comes to exploiting human life. They'll do it to children, they'll do it to everyone. And sadly, it's gonna be on us to make that change and to safeguard. So that was, I didn't even think I was gonna get into that, but we got into that, and I think it was really important. Oh, there's 2 more minutes? Oh, it's weird. It said only to 20 minutes. Didn't it? Oh, to 20. Okay, guys, I keep thinking I'm leaving, but
managed to alienate Drake from his father despite all of these protections in place.
I'm not leaving.
After he was convicted in 2004 and served his jail time, Brian Peck still managed to work in Hollywood. Not only in Hollywood, but with children in Hollywood. He landed a job on the set of The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, despite being a known and registered child offender. He was quickly fired once the media got hold that Disney had hired a child offender, but it was a clear display of how quickly Hollywood forgets when it comes to fame and power and famous, powerful connections. At Brian Peck's sentencing hearing, numerous actors wrote letters of support for him. James Marsden, Taron Killam, who worked alongside Belle on The Amanda Show, Ryder Strong and Will Friedle, who starred in Boy Meets World and worked with Peck when they were child actors. Strong and Friedle have since come out on their podcast, Pod Meets World, to acknowledge their role and discuss the way Peck had manipulated them as well when they were just kids. In 2012, the Child Performer Protection Act was passed in California. It requires all service providers who work with children in the entertainment industry to obtain a permit from the Department of Labor, including managers, publicists, photographers, acting coaches, summer camp counselors, and more. To get the permit, the person must submit to an FBI-level fingerprint clearance and be added to the state database.
Yeah, we learned this in Open
so
Secret.
That parents are able to research the people working with their children. And this would have prevented Peck from getting that job at The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, but it still wouldn't have protected Drake Bell, who was the victim of a man with enough power and connections that even a plea of no contest.
And I don't think so, because Disney hired Victor Salva, for example, knowing he is a convicted SO. And I don't think that would stop, because we also learned from the episode 5 of Quiet on Set that a convicted SO is allowed to be on set with a child as long as there are guardians and parents present. So that doesn't stop them actually from getting a job at Disney. Am I wrong? Daisy upgraded. Daisy, hi. And Kelly, welcome to the Munchies. Isn't that weird? Wait, what is Miko saying? Dinner party members and chef's kids are eligible for the raffle. Thank you for supporting the channel. Oh, I already gave somebody. The Nickelodeon didn't protect us, so they're going to be emailing us. So don't. Sorry, Mika. You weren't here when that happened, probably. So yeah, so that's what's sad though. Like, regardless, he could go on set. He could get that job, legally speaking. We need to change that law.
To a criminal conviction for being a child offender didn't dissuade his supporters from writing him letters of support and showing up at sentencing on his behalf. And that's the insidious nature of fame. Something in human nature fully turns our basic mental functioning off when faced with fame and influence. One time in 2011, I was at a Keystone XL pipeline protest at the White House, talking to my friend who was an organizer for Occupy Wall Street, and up walks Mark Ruffalo, who says, "Hey man," and my friend says, "Hey Mark," and they hug, and I stand there like a fish out of water. Hub, hub, bub, 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 bub. Idiot. And while Mark Ruffalo seems like a genuinely nice guy and was giving daddy in those sex scenes in Poor Things, that level of power to make people starstruck, either by your own star power or the celebrities you know, gives ample opportunity for bad people to take advantage. And as far as I can tell, that's the name of the game in Hollywood. A constant scramble to step on as many bodies as possible towards the top of the food chain, to know the right people and toss everyone else to the side. And so this culture and atmosphere is encouraged, and the most vulnerable people, like children, get...
But that's also society at large. That's also corporate structures. That's corporate entities. That's capitalism. Is what they call it, the rat race, the whole thing of just it's not just Hollywood. I think that's most industries.
Very, very hurt in the process. But because of the internet,
All
and
right,
the
so we
growth of
got there, right? That was 23 to what? Okay, good. That is, I think it's really important though to remember that Hollywood is just a very public symptom of capitalism, I think, in a lot of ways, because of it's based on exploitation. And so these companies that are thriving in a capitalistic society, this is why they're able to thrive, because that is the basis, honestly. It's about how can you succeed, not caring about how you succeed. No one's worried when someone says that I've succeeded at this. No one goes on whose backs. And have you done anything shady when it came to getting successful? Those questions aren't usually asked because that'd be also really kind of awkward to do that. But what I've noticed for the most part is a lot of these major, super successful CEOs, for example, people in serious positions of power, for the most part, they have succeeded. Not have they succeed on the backs of others. That's why they succeeded, is because to succeed at that type of level of success, it's baked into, I say this all the time, into the cake of becoming successful, is not caring about who you have to overstep, overthrow, disregard, replace, ABUSE. This is very common, and we see it all the time. Massey, Brian Robbins pursued Debbie Gibson when they co-hosted the Kids' Choice Awards in 1988. Debbie was only 17 while Robbins was 24, for the record. What? Wait, where did you find that? Brian Robbins pursued Debbie Gibson. Let's write that down. Debbie Gibson. They co-hosted the Kids' Choice Awards in 1988. Debbie was only 17 while Robbins... I did not know that. Can you please send... How does Brian Robbins still have a job in this industry? How do so many of these people have jobs in the industry? I mean, really? How? And I think it is because that is rewarded. That's, wow, you did that. You really wanted success, or you really cared about your job. You were willing to do whatever it took. And sadly, that is the industry. That is the industry. Miranda's dad was vice president of Warner Brothers. Really? Wait, Miranda's dad, are we talking about Miranda who's married to Raven Symone? Raven, no way. Vice president of Warner Brothers. And what's interesting is that Quiet on Set, the doc, is owned by Warner Brothers. So that's a little bit interesting. Lays himself in season 5 finale of Full House. Really? Debbie Gibson. I'm gonna look into Debbie Gibson. We can maybe talk about that tomorrow. So yeah. So much change, so many things that hopefully after having a lot of conversations around this, soon we can start actually creating some change. And hey, Alexa, have you seen the Brock Pierce From Den doc Vice just put out? He's trying to rebrand himself now. Thank you again for all you do. Plain Sight. What? No, I haven't. Let's watch that tomorrow. Wait, I'm going to put a note here. Wait, it's from Vice, Brock, The Den. Okay, I'm putting that there for tomorrow. Thank you for flagging that for me. And Alanis Morissette was on Nickelodeon Kids shows. Really? I didn't know Alanis Morissette was on Nickelodeon Kids shows because I know the Dave Cool, what's his name? Such a creepy, weird, that photo, she looks so young. He looks in his 30s and she's like, what, 18 years old? It's so gross. Ruby Moon, thank you. We community members have established a NPO called Power to Survivors with a mission to work to make real changes. We're building spaces and numbers so we can be seen and can't be ignored. I sent you an email, though it may have gotten buried. Oh, Ruby Moon, thank you for letting me know. Thank you for letting me know. I'll check the email out. Miko, also, if you're listening, let's star that email. Thank you for letting me know. Power to survivors. Okay, so on that note, have a nice night. I'll see you tomorrow. Also, reminder that Friday is movie night again, and let's do a Judy Garland cover. Let's do it. Let's do it, and have a beautiful night, everyone. And thank you for being here, and thank you, new members. And please remember to like this video, turn your notifications on, subscribe. Thank you for helping. Thank you for supporting. You guys are the best. Bye.
One of the